Honored and privileged to have you, sir. Thank you for gracing our occasion. Thank you, sir.
Uh, Thank you so much, ma'am. It is my privilege to be here. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So you can start your session.
Okay, so good afternoon to you all, and thank you so much for having me here. And I am very like I said, I'm very privileged to be here, in a meeting with all of you privileged faculty from all across India. So it is a great opportunity to have a to be able to interact with you all and spend a few days with the hands-on workshops on Unity 3D and VR and AR in the next couple of days. So moving on, before I start, I would like to tell you that I am a very informal person, and the way I tend to teach, I know that you're all experts, and I'm not as experienced as any of you in the matter of teaching, but I will try my best to convey all the details, all that we have to cover in the next few days. So. Yeah, my sessions would be very informal. You could, stop me at any time. Just ping on the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and ask questions if necessary. Please feel free as well. And I would want you to interact with me during the session as well. Like I may ask certain things about what you know, and you could just type in chat about if you know the right response to that query that I will be asking. So before I start, I would like to know, if you don't mind, I would like to know from which all departments all of you faculty are from. I would, if you could just type in chat which department you're from, so that I can get an understanding of, what kind of, what way I should go about this. Okay, I see CSE, and I'm assuming, oh, management. Okay, that's amazing. CS, I mean, I'm an EC student. I was an EC student back when I was doing my BTech as well. So okay, this is amazing. So we have we have people from almost every department, and across different domains as well, like mass communication, management. I was just expecting people from engineering, but this is really amazing. If at any point you feel overwhelmed, just don't be, because I started off as when I started off with working with VR when I was back in college. I had no understanding of programming. I had no understanding of I did not have enough understanding of mathematics, because even mathematics is applied here. I did not have the perfect understanding of physics, but even every kind of person can easily adapt to VR technology in different ways. And even if you are an artist, even if you are a good writer, even if you are interested in design, even if you are interested in engineering, core engineering, if you want to, if you're good at programming, if you're, you can apply a lot there. And even if you're a mechanical engineer, a civil engineer, faculty, or any department, there are companies in every domain using Unity 3D and VR, VR and AR, all kinds of these XR technologies to actually bring about different kinds of new things to the domain. So even I would probably show you a couple of examples today and in the following days regarding that. And yes, I will definitely share my contact details before the end of the session. So moving on, I'll just share my screen, and we can start the session if you're all okay with it. Uh, Please let me know if you can see my screen right now. Okay, thank you
Yes,
so
sir.
much. Okay, so I'll just so I'll just turn off my video, since for a bit, because when I move on to Unity, the thing is Unity. I want to ask if how many of you have installed Unity 3D on your laptops or desktops? If you have installed, you can just type in yes or no. Okay, amazing. I am assuming most of you have installed, and for those who have not installed, I believe Deepa ma'am and um, yeah, the faculty from.
Yes, sir. Yeah. We have forwarded. We have also sent them the mail regarding installation of the same.
Okay,
I think most of them have installed.
okay, awesome.
Okay.
That's great. So I guess we can move on straight to the session. I'll just turn off my video because the thing with Unity is that since it takes up a lot of graphics, there would be point because of the bandwidth that some things could be blurry. And if at any point anything is not clear or if it is blurry, you could just if anyone can just unmute yourself and just let me know. We can try to slow things down and get the bandwidth up. So. Okay, I'm moving on to the session. So, so today we'll be covering an introduction to like we'll just be doing a very brief intro on virtual reality because I saw the schedule and I believe that there are many sessions of very esteemed people explaining virtual reality. Probably they can explain it better than me. So I will focus mostly on the hands-on part and the development part, but I will give a basic intro on virtual reality as per my understanding. So virtual reality and augmented reality are basically a way of immersion. So can anyone just what is immersion to you? Can maybe one of you can just unmute yourself and tell me what immersion is to you, if that is okay with you. Like what is immersion in the physical? When you come to the physical terms, what do you think immersion is? Or you could just type in chat, maybe just a word or a small sentence, maybe.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Before.
Immersion is the literal meaning is getting involved in something 100%.
Right. Exactly. Anyone else? Would anyone else like to? Okay, so we have a couple of inputs from the chat. So Avik Mitra sir says perception experience. That is true. And Punta Duran ma'am said, people will have to be engaged. So yes, that is also right. So I will go deep down onto the basic understanding of immersion. Immersion is basically, as the image says. So when you take a ball or take a box or something and then just immerse it in water. So when you just dunk it completely, when it is completely underwater, it is completely surrounded by uh, you know water, obviously, and so there is its perception is completely, whatever the box sees is just water around it, and whatever is under the water, we can't really perceive much above water what is outside. So we can understand so I am using that as an inference for digital experiences. So this water can be understood as a digital experience, and the box can be the user who is using the VR or AR experience. So the object or the user is completely surrounded by the digital experience, like a box immersed in water. So that is just my understanding of it. So basically what immersive technology, so what immersive technologies are is basically AR, VR, MR, anything that takes, brings in the digital, something from the digital assimilated world into the real world. So it so in virtual reality, we have a complete cutoff from the real world. And in augmented reality, we have the digital elements coming into our real world. So that is what it is. So I would like to understand if everyone here understands what virtual reality is. I'm assuming that you had a session in the morning that mentioned the same. You can just say yes or no if you understand what virtual reality is, or if you want me to give a more detailed explanation of what VR is. Okay, I'm just going to assume that everybody here knows what virtual reality is. So yes, also about CR, I'm pretty sure that some of you had seen the letters. Like I mentioned VR, AR, MR, and CR. I'm pretty sure that most of you know what VR and AR are: virtual reality and augmented reality. Mixed reality is a culmination of bringing depth and perception to the real world, where the virtual and the real world can coexist at the same time. And CR is probably something that you probably have never heard of. CR is basically cinematic reality. So basically, in the basic sense, cinematic reality also means watching a movie is also cinematic reality. You get immersed in the movie, immersed in the story. But what if that is brought into your real world, or you are brought into the movie? So when you do a virtual reality movie or an augmented reality movie, so we can call that cinematic reality, a completely scripted storyline video or an audio experience that can take the user into the cinematic realm. So that is what cinematic reality is. If you can even try out, there are some really good virtual reality movies or short films that are in YouTube that you can try out on your phone itself, even without a VR headset. So one movie I would suggest is Phobia, which is by an Indian creator. A friend of mine, a close friend of mine, created the movie, and Radhika Apte acted in the movie. So you can check it out as well. I could type it down a little later. I think I should put in all the references and inputs as a separate mail or a document, and then share it with you guys post the session. So moving on. So what the difference between AR, VR, and MR? I'm assuming that most of you might have heard it in the first session, or maybe will hear more in depth into it in the later sessions. So I'll just give you a brief overview onto it. So virtual reality brings the user completely into another world, completely in a digital world. The user does not have an understanding of what is happening outside of the virtual world when you're wearing a virtual reality headset. Uh, you're just seeing the virtual world. You're not seeing the real world. But augmented reality is exactly the opposite. So we have the perception of the real world. We see what we see, and in augmented reality, it brings the digital elements onto our real world. So if there is a virtual animated puppy, you can bring it into the real world and play with it. There are games that do that, and that is just a very basic example I just gave, but there are a lot of things that we can do with augmented reality. So one way to do is, like, the most frequent use of augmented reality is basically in the Snapchat and Instagram filters, where you can just change your face into the face of a puppy or something like that. That is a very basic and most widely accepted application of AR, which is a subsegment of AR called social AR, which I'm pretty sure most of you have tried, and you might have seen most of your children or students or brothers or sisters using it a lot. I'm pretty sure at least almost all of you use Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat, so you might be very well aware of it. Probably you might not have connected it with AR. So MR brings in an extra element to it. So in the case of augmented reality, it has a basic understanding of your environment, but it does not have spatial awareness. It does not know what your room looks like, does not know what your space looks like, and stuff like that. So what mixed reality does is, mixed reality has an understanding of the world that you're in. So mixed reality can be in two ways. It can be either we are seeing the real world and placing things in the real world, where if you place something on the table and then it falls off the table, it understands the spatial awareness, understands that this object is in this space. So it understands. So what usually happens is, every mixed reality device has a depth sensor, which actually tracks the depth of objects in front of you or around you. So I'm not going to go deep into that. You can ping me if you want a conversation on this a little later. I've seen that there are sessions that are coming in the coming days that are going to explain this in detail. I'm not going to go into the details and give you the climax of that. So I'll just go straight into, oh, before going to that, this is basically what, so can someone confirm if you can see my mouse pointer? Uh,
Yes,
yes,
sir.
okay. Okay, thank you, sir. So this is basically the mixed reality spectrum. So everything under augmented reality, mixed reality are very tightly. So it is a very closely connected Venn diagram, but it is not everything is mixed reality. So we have physical reality, which is the real world on this end, and the completely digital reality where you're only perceiving the digital space around you. So the closest thing to the digital reality is what virtual reality is, because you're completely cut off from the real world. Moving on to the other end of the spectrum, which is physical reality, very close to the physical, when you're bringing in very limited amount of 3D objects into the real world, or minimal digital objects into the real world, that is augmented reality. And everything in between is mixed reality. So it depends on the depth of the sensation, like depth of how much, it depends on how much depth is perceived by the mixed reality device. So how much understanding of the real world it has and how much interactivity you can bring into the real world. So that is what, this is what the basic spectrum of the mixed reality spectrum is like. But even though it seems like it, there are, all three of them are not the same, even though there are some gray areas where they can be similar, they can feel similar. So let's talk about virtual reality. So I'm not sure if any history majors are here among the faculty, but I am a very big fan of history. So I always go back into the history of anything that I try to learn. So I would like you to know the history of VR as well. I'm not sure if it was covered in one of the sessions earlier, but I will just quickly go through this. So VR didn't come up very recently. VR started even in the 1800s. So it became a buzzword. The virtual reality term was coined very recently, probably in the early 1900s or in the early 2000s. But the concept of VR has been here for hundreds of years, but in very different formats. Like so this was probably the most widespread, technology-wise product that was brought out, which is called the Sensorama, where you can just put your head inside a big, big box kind of thing, like you can see in the image here, and you can perceive images, like the moving pictures in 3D. It has a very wide view because it had a curved screen with a CRT at the back, and there is color, stereo. So the sound is, we have binaural, left right audio is there. You can understand what is walking in from the left and right. And the most amazing thing it had was that it gave you the feeling of aromas. Like if you are smelling a flower if you're seeing a flower in front of you, you can smell the flower when you're in the Sensorama machine, when your head is in the Sensorama machine. And more than that, the seat moves. Seat and your hand holders move, so it gives you vibrations, movements. If you are in a roller coaster, the whole seat moves as such, exactly as per. So it's very much like the 4D, 5D experience that you can find in amusement parks, but this was a lot more closed and individual experience. But way before this, we had something called the stereoscope. I'm pretty sure almost, at least most of you have seen this, or something like this being sold as Chinese products for worth 10 rupees. You can see, put in photos and then see things in 3D. So what happens is you put in two images in front of you. Each image is, has an offset of about 10 centimeters, which is about roughly the distance between the two eyes of an average person. And each of these images have been taken or painted and then placed in front of you. That gives you the perception of 3D. So that is basically how our eyes work. So our brain manipulates what the eye sees and then shows you the depth. So if you are just viewing something if you just close one eye and then go about your life for like maybe one whole day, you would probably sort of lose your sense of depth. But where it is the brain actually calculates the depth of your the things in front of you with the help of both eyes. So Then this amazing instrument was made back in the 1960s, 1970s. This was called this was an experience. This was an augmented reality experience. Actually, it was not just VR. It was more augmented reality than virtual reality. But the thing was that there were two CRT tubes that were connected onto the connected and using periscopes laid onto the user's eyes, and they had built a game around it where the user can perceive 3D objects in front of them, and there was a game that can be uh, played by the movement of the person. So it was called the Sword of Damocles. I haven't put in the name of it in my slide here, but the Sword of Damocles was a very famous experience back in the day. Next up, like, I'm pretty sure that all of you are very, familiar with flight simulators. Flight simulators, actually, the users, the pilots are first trained in a flight simulator. So all the windows have displays instead of actual windows, and all the windows render 3D visuals depending on how you move the flight simulators. So that is basically that is basically a virtual reality experience in itself, because you're technically in a box completely, cut off from the real world. You're flying your plane in a virtual world. So in every sense, the flight simulators were one of the early virtual reality devices, even though virtual reality, the name as a buzzword, was not created back then. Then probably some of you might have seen if these experiences where you have projected visuals on the walls, and you'll be wearing 3D glasses, and when you walk around, the visuals move around with you. And these experiences were very famous around the 2000s at expos, especially mostly in the Gulf area. If any of you have been, experienced some of this, something like this way back in the day. But this was an amazing experience where you're in a room that is completely, has projectors and visuals. It tracks the motion of the person, and depending on what the user does, like if you're walking, the visuals make it seem like you're walking actually in the actually in 3D world. If you jump into a hole, you fall into a hole, and the visuals change as such, and things like that. So virtual reality became a buzzword way after this. Very recently, not exactly very recently, about 9 years ago. Like, there were many researches, many papers that were that have been made on it for maybe decades, but it became an actual product that came into the layman's hands through this product, which is the Oculus, which I'm sure that most of you have been familiarized by now. The Oculus Rift was built by this developer called Palmer Luckey, who started the company Oculus and then sold the company to Facebook. So Palmer had made a headset with two displays in front of you that cover the eyes, and then and it tracks the motion of the head, and it will be connected to your computer. What he did was that there was already an existing technology that had that enabled him to actually build this headset and integrate it with a digital world that can move around. So what he did was he brought it into games. He made a game using a random game engine, and then integrated this, made all the drivers and stuff, and integrated with that engine, and then that is how the buzzword of VR started. And he started with a small Kickstarter campaign, and then it became big, and and that actually that was the first stepping stone for VR as we know it now. But the problem with this product was that it was not for everyone. It was very costly at the beginning. So even though it was launched in 2011 as a development kit, it came out in 2014 for general developers, then came out for consumers in 2015-16. And then, but the problem with it was that it had to be connected to a high-end computer with high-end graphics, and we had to. So the person who was using it needed to have a basic budget of about 1 to 2 lakhs to actually experience something like this, which was not meant for all kinds of consumers, only for rich people and hardcore gamers. So Google, like, as you know, like, is very famous for uh, making great strides in that domain, in any domain they touch, exactly, actually. So what they did was that actually you don't need to have a high-end computer. We all have a basic computer in our hands, in our pockets at all times. So that is when Google came out with the Google Cardboard. They said, why don't you just render the same things on your phone? Like, we can make games using game engines and then put them on your phone. We'll just make an SDK that any developer can use to make VR experiences. And you don't have to buy a headset. You can, if you have some cardboard lying around in your house and some bifocal lenses that you use for basic biology experiments, like the school level biology experiments, you can just make something out of this. They just first they came out with the cardboard, they made a cardboard cutting and then did this, and then came out with it, brought it out, and also they made a basic cutout map where you can just print out the paper, put it on a cardboard sheet, and then cut out and then make the folds as such, and then make it. So it was a nearly no cost device that you can use and put your phone inside, and then you can work with it. The only catch was that the phones had to have a gyroscope. Uh, I'm not sure if every one of you know what a gyroscope is. Gyroscope is a sensor inside your phone that enables the phone to understand what orientation that phone is in. So after the advent of the Google Cardboards, when then every single company started coming out with VR headsets, and every single company started coming out with VR headsets, and that's how it started. That's how the buzz started. That's how even I started. I saw the first Google Cardboard back in the 2014, and I was like, let's try this. So even before that, I was trying to do something like this, but we had to go through a tremendous amount of computer vision, and I was bad at code, so I couldn't do it. But Google came out with something, an SDK that any developer can use with very minimal coding, and that's how it began. And then at the same time, this headset is called the HTC Vive. This is the Oculus. So then the rest, most of the other devices are basically Chinese variants of that Google Cardboard. These are just plastic mobile holders with lenses like these. So they're all just Chinese variants of the same thing, not just Chinese. I'm just being stereotypical here, but even in India, even many companies in India also make it, and you can get a basic cardboard headset for like 300 to 500 rupees, or even with a headset and everything, with an earpiece and everything, for about 2,000 rupees. So even then, I still prefer the Google Cardboard because it had the best bifocal lenses they could find. So yeah, moving on. So before I move ahead, does anyone have a question that you'd like to ask? Okay, I'm guessing there aren't any. Am I still audible, or did I get cut off? I'm just checking.
You're audible, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. And okay, I'll just move on. So I'll just make it faster because we are losing time. I should have started on Unity by now. But before I get to that, I wanted to make the basic stuff clear. So virtual reality can be broadly classified in two spectrums. One is depending on the device, and one is depending on the type of immersion that you go. So it can either be PC or mobile device, or it can be 3D immersion or 360-degree media. We'll start with what 3D immersion is. So 3D immersion is the user is completely placed in a 3D environment that is created, like completely 3D environment, exactly like in the game, like 3D games that anyone could download and play, like GTA or Assassin's Creed or Prince of Persia, all those games. Even you could call PUBG. PUBG is also 3D immersion. So 3D, it's in a 3D environment. What VR does is you place the user in the 3D space. So rather than just holding your phone, you can wear a 3D headset and you can see from the perspective of the main character. So that is what 3D immersion is. So what 360 media is basically, you can take 360 photos and then place it 360 photos or videos. There are cameras that are out there that can record 360-degree photos and videos, which are available for pretty a decent amount right now. Yeah, then you can just place the user inside at the center of this. What you do is you have an image, like you'll get an image like this when you take a 360 photo or a video. So, and what we do is we'll just wrap this image around a sphere and then place the user inside the sphere, and then this user can look around and see it. So it is very less interactive, and you can only go from one scene to the other. There is no interaction within the scene, whereas in 3D immersion you can interact with almost anything inside the scene. So moving on to the other kind of differentiation, which is the PC VR and the mobile VR. So what PC VR does is every PC VR headset, just minimize this so that I can just show you. So if you can see my video, I'm not sure if you can see my video. You will have a headset like this with a really long connector. So it has to get connected to your laptop to actually work. And in the earlier days, I'll just stop presenting so that it will be easier. You can see my video instead. Okay, so in the earlier days, there used to be sensors that were external sensors that you had to be placed on two corners of a room or two corners of the space that you will be experiencing VR. So those sensors were basically depth sensors, which actually track the person. So nowadays, the VR headsets have moved on a little bit with depth sensing cameras on all 4 or 5 sides. There are 5 cameras on this device. We'll be talking about this device a little later. And what it does is it does inside-out tracking, which is basically it uses the depth sensing technology to track the environment around you, so that it can. So what it doesn't really track and give you the data of the environment, but it lets the computer know where the user is. So if the user is walking, it uses the depth sensing cameras to actually detect where the user is walking to. And then what the computer does is uses that data to move the actual 3D, move the person in the actual 3D environment. Okay, moving on. So there are many devices that can be considered to be PC VR, which needs to be connected to the PC. The HTC Vive, the Oculus Rift. So this is the HTC Vive Pro. These boxes are what I had mentioned earlier. It had to be placed at 2 corners. It gives you an immense clarity of tracking when the user is in the space. So what these holes are for is not really for design. So these depth sensors have optical sensors over here. So these are not depth sensors. These are basically laser emitting arrays. So they emit a laser array, and each of these optical sensors detect the flight path of the arrays and then calculate where the user is. So the same with these handheld controllers. These are controllers that the user holds in their hands. So this is the HTC Vive Pro. This is the PlayStation VR. If anyone who has a PlayStation can buy a PlayStation VR and play VR games. And then there is the Oculus Rift S, which I just shown, which is the newer version of the old Oculus Rift. We have these controllers as well, which are very user friendly, and it feels like your hands are in the virtual space. You can even see your hands in the virtual space, but you'll be seeing a 3D version of it.
Sorry for interrupting you. Kindly share your screen, sir.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was sharing. I'm so sorry. Thank you for notifying it.
Thank you, sir.
Can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I am terribly sorry. I thought I had clicked the button, but it didn't come up for some reason. Okay, so these are the PC headsets that I was talking about. These are the sensors that I was talking about. These are not sensors per se. They are actually laser emitting, light emitting array. It emits an array of lasers that, IR lights that can be detected by optical sensors that are on these punch holes in the design. So that is how the HTC Vive works. So the same with PlayStation VR. It also has, it also has a sensor that will track the headset. And in the case of the Oculus Rift S, it has, just like I showed earlier, there are sensors within themselves that can actually, track, track the user's motion in the environment. So the older Oculus Rifts had, I don't have a picture of that. Okay. The older Oculus Rift had a tabletop light emitting array, IR emitting array that actually gave the data of the data that the user is moving, but now they have removed it. So the other kind of classification is mobile VR. Mobile VR is basically using a mobile, putting it in a cardboard or putting it in a plastic headset and then using it. So the mobile, if it has a proper gyroscope, it can track the user's motion. Wherever the head is moving, the user can move, and you can connect it to any Bluetooth controller. You can buy Bluetooth controllers, or you can, if you're good with electronics, you can make your own Bluetooth controller, sync it with your phone, and then you use it as your controller. So Google came up. So Google came up with cardboard. Then they thought that they should make a premium version of this as well, and they came out with the Google Daydream, which used to cost around 8,000 rupees. It only worked with phones that supported Google Daydream, which was about 10 to 15 phones in the market, even right now. But Google has discontinued this headset for now. Excuse me for that. And then there is a Gear VR. This was built by Samsung. This is built by Samsung in association with Oculus, and it is basically the software is basically what Oculus, the Oculus systems use. We use the same SDK that the Oculus systems use, but what you do is you place a phone in the front. You place a phone in the front, and you have a controller as well, and you can use the controller to make make basic interactions like clicking or using it as your hand and stuff like that. So after the mobile and the PC headsets, then very recently in the last couple of years came the standalone headsets. The standalone headsets are basically mobile VR headsets itself, but oh, sorry, the Reverb is not a standalone headset, but that is also a PC VR headset, the one on the right. That is my fault. So the Oculus Quest is one of the most advanced standalone headsets in the market right now, and the latest version was just launched about last month, and this version was launched about 2 years ago. And the best part about this is that it is very cheap and handy, and it gives you a complete 6 degrees of freedom of movement. Like, you can walk around, you can have perfect head tracking, and you have 2 controllers. And it does not need an extra phone. It does not need to be connected to a computer. It runs Android OS, and you can build Android APKs, Android APKs, and then push it directly to this device. The Oculus Go was an older version of older or probably one of the first standalone headsets that came out. It was extremely cheap. It costed about 12,000 rupees. Right now it costs cheaper, and it has been discontinued though. But Oculus Go was very handy. It did not have head tracking properly. It just had it did track the head, but it did not track movement, and it had only one control. Again, the HP Reverb is not a standalone headset. This is my fault. It also connects to the computer just like the PC VR headsets and has the controller. Then there are these things called full body VR devices. So as you can see in this image, it's probably not very clear. If I can probably show you a video of it's working a little later. So the Virtuix Omni is a full body VR device where we can use any of the PC VR headsets connected to a computer. The Omni this is basically a treadmill. So it is an omnidirectional treadmill where you can just keep walking. You have to wear special shoes that comes with the device, which makes the surface a little bit frictionless, so that when you're walking, you're slipping basically. So it is hollow, and you will be walking on the spot. Even if you're walking or running, you'll be supported by this, so this plastic support around you, and you won't fall off. But it tracks tracks where your feet move. It has perfect tracking. Like it can perfectly track every single footstep that you do in the 3D space. Then there is a Holosuit, which is an Indian company that had made a jacket and gloves. Basically, what they did was they lined a lot of vibration sensors onto the jacket, and whenever if you're playing a virtual reality game, and if the person stabs you or something, or throws a rock at you, you'll feel the vibrations at that point. If it is a slash, you'll feel the slash in the direction that the enemy has cut you. So the vibration moves, and it gives you the feeling that you are actually in a fight. If it's a boxing fight, it is really hard to play with that thing, because you can actually feel the punches on your chest. So yeah, that's about that. I'll show you videos about these if we have the time. Then moving on, let's just familiarize the basic VR jargons, which are basic terminologies that we use when we talk about virtual reality, which is HMD. So HMDs are edge-mounted displays, which are basically VR, any VR headsets or VR glasses that you can just connect, put it on straight on your head. There'll be a phone display, or it can either be a phone display or a basic LCD display that comes with the Oculus. Anything that displays, anything that you put on your head is basically a head-mounted display. Then there is a FOV. Like we all know what a field of view is. Like the basic human field of view is almost 180 degrees. It's 179 point something, if I'm not wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not really sure about that. But each and every device has its fixed field of view. For example, the Oculus Rift has about 110 to 120 degrees field of view, and depending on the field of view, it gives you an idea of how much depth you can see in the in the virtual world. Then there is transform. Transform is a word that we will be using even today when we go into the hands-on section, because transform is basically everything in the 3D domain is it has an origin that is 0, 0, 0. We always use the Cartesian coordinate system, where I'm assuming that I'm assuming that everyone knows what Cartesian coordinate systems are. Basically, it is like graphs. The X and Y graphs, right? So that is you have 2 degree Cartesian graph. So when there is a third degree, that is the Z direction, which will be perpendicular to this, perpendicular to this plane altogether. That will be the third axis. So right now we'll just explain that in detail when we go to Unity, because it will be easier to show and tell. But transform is that every object in space, every object in 3D space has its coordinates. Every edge has a coordinates. Every object center has a coordinate. So when you move an object, its coordinates change depending on how much it has moved. So if you're familiar with vector mathematics, you can actually calculate exactly how much you have moved, but you don't really have to calculate, because the game engines already do that for you. When you move it, you just have to see the numbers, or you can just when you're programming something, you just need to know where the position has to be towards the end, so that you can move that object to that position. So there are two kinds of there are two ways when the object moves. If the object moves in space, there are two ways the coordinates actually change. So one is the local coordinates, and the one is the global coordinates. So local coordinate is when you global coordinate is when you move and the coordinates change, and local is when the whole origin of the object moves, and technically when you take the local when you take the local points, local coordinates, it will feel as if you look at the local coordinates, it will feel as if it has not changed, but in the whole world space, it has moved. I think I should explain it in much more detail when we move on to the Unity part. Then there is degrees of freedom. So I did mention degrees of freedom a couple of times earlier. So what degrees of freedoms are? So if you're a mechanical engineer or if you have gone through studying mechanics, you would know what degrees of freedom are. Most engineers do, but since there are many non-engineers, I'll definitely go in and explain it in depth. So basically, you have three axes. So there is the x-axis, the y-axis, and the z-axis. Let's consider the movement of our eyeballs. So the eyeballs can move up, left, right, and in every direction in the 360-degree spectrum, and it's basically moving in the x, y, and z direction. If you take a okay, I think I should put on my video for this. So if you take an object, if you take an object like this, and if it has 3 degrees of freedom, it can only move in this exact point. It will move in this direction, it can move in this direction, but its origin always stays the same. So technically it only has 3 degrees of freedom in X, Y, and Z direction. So that is what 3 degrees of freedom is. When it comes to 6 degrees of freedom, what happens is we have movement in the XY plane, the YZ plane, and the ZX plane. So technically when we are moving in the real world, we have arguably we have about 6 degrees of freedom, and we are moving in the front, we are moving around, so we can move up and down. This is basically our head movement. So this is basically what 6 degrees of freedom is. So as you can see here, okay, I'll just talk about the software essentials now. Like when we are making a virtual reality application, we would need so primarily we would start with actually making the creative objects, which is basically in a 3D software. The image here is of a 3D software. Like there are many 3D softwares out there: Blender, Maya, Cinema 4D. And 3ds Max. You might have heard at least Maya somewhere because it is used in a lot of movies for VFX and 3D graphics. So what we do is we create trees, objects, every single cars or whatever we can create in 3D models there, and then we bring it to a software, a game engine that can simulate physics in real time, so that we can actually create virtual reality or game experiences. So the main softwares that we use, like the most frequently used softwares in the world, are Unity 3D and Unreal Engine. So another option would be to go with WebVR, WebVR is basically, so before going to that, Unity 3D. So Unity 3D is basically the one we will be going through during this the next couple of days. Unity 3D is an amazing game engine. So what games do is they render in real time. When you take a 3D graphics and VFX in movies, what they do is they actually create the 3D effects and then put it in a render farm. It gets rendered after a long time, maybe like 1 to 2 days, or it could go up to 2 to 3 months. And then you just show the final experience. But it will always be fixed because it's a movie. But when it comes to 3D experiences, it is always changing. The user will not follow a single path. Every user uses a different path, and every time you experience something, you will walk a different way, or touch something, or press a button a different way. So it has to be rendered. We'll have to render every single frame at the time it is being at the time the user moves. So that is why we need powerful 3D game engines. So Unity 3D is one such engine, and why I chose Unity 3D for this. The hands-on sessions are because it is very easy to use. Anyone can start off easily, and it does not require too much of a graphic requirement to actually make applications. But yeah, and there is coding. We code in C#. C# is very similar to Java, but a lot easier because we don't have to go deeper into the we can stay in the high end, and there are a lot of syntaxes that Unity 3D has made, which can easily help people understand, make use of the coding, even though they do not know much coding. But it is, yeah. So then there is Unreal Engine, which is arguably the best editor in terms of graphics quality, and it focuses mostly on artists, and you don't really need to know how to code to use it, but it is not easy for beginners. So most of the best games in the market right now are made using Unreal Engine. Even many of the VR games are made in Unreal Engine. But the problem is that it requires a lot of, your laptops need to have a high specifications and stuff like that. Yeah. And then there is WebVR. WebVR is basically VR for the browsers. You can create a VR experience. So the other cases you can only deploy to VR devices. Either mobile VR, you have to export it as an APK, make the user download it and experience it. Or if it is a PC VR headset, you'll have to export it as an exe in case of because exe is an executable that runs on Windows. So you'll have to make an executable app for Windows and then run it on the virtual reality headset. So yeah, so what WebVR does is we can actually run it over the browser. All you have to do for someone to experience VR in the browser is share a link, and then the other person can see it over any device they want. It is an experimental JavaScript API. It is sort of stable right now, but there are still things that are coming in every day, and not all browsers support it at all times. Like the latest versions of Google and Mozilla does support it. Firefox does support it, but there are limitations to how much it can support. And it has a visual editor as well. It used to have a visual editor. The visual editor is still there, but limited features. And it's not so easy for beginners. But if you are a web developer and if you are very strong with coding, you can definitely try WebVR. But we won't be covering that in the session because that is a whole segment altogether. So I have a few examples I wanted to show you, but due to the lack of time, I'll move on to the hands-on segment so that if we have the time, we can come back to this, or I can show you these videos on the upcoming days. So moving on, do you have any questions? We'll be moving on to the hands-on section now. Oh, okay. There are questions in the chat. I'm so sorry. I hadn't read the chat yet because I wasn't able to see it. Yes, can we design 3D models in WebVR? So what we can do is, we can create 3D models in a 3D software and then bring it into WebVR. We cannot create 3D models in WebVR, but actually, if it is an intricate design, we can bring it in. But there are ways to actually create 3D models with code. So that is a very complex process, but there is one JavaScript library that lets you do it. It is called 3.js. I'll just type it in chat. So 3.js, so even WebVR runs on top of 3.js. So if you can learn 3.js, you can actually create 3D models of your own with code. But there is a limitation. It can, if you want very intricate, complex 3D models, it would be hard. But 3.js lets you import 3D models that you create or download from other sources to bring, to be brought into this as well. So any other question? So I felt that I was moving a little too fast because of the time constraint. So if I miss something or if I move too fast at some point, you can just ask. Okay, so I guess we'll move on. So
participants, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, I'll proceed.
Okay, sir, you can proceed.
So we'll move on to Unity now. So when you install in the installation instructions, you might have seen that mentioned that I had asked everyone to download the Unity Hub. So to start up Unity, you can either use Unity Hub, or maybe there is when you install Unity, there will be also a Unity editor interface as well. But I always suggest that you click on Unity Hub to open Unity. Can someone confirm if you can still see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So this is what Unity Hub looks
We
like.
are able to see the screen.
Okay, thank you, man. Okay, I'll just turn off my video because now it would get. So this is what Unity Hub looks like. Every project that you do will be listed here. And the best thing about Unity Hub is that if you want to learn as well on different topics of development, so we won't be covering how to make virtual reality applications today, because we'll be doing that a little later, because you need the basic foundation of Unity 3D for the next for tomorrow and the day after. So I'll be giving you a basic understanding and basic walkthrough of how to use Unity today. So there is learn. You can go to learn.unity.com, or if you are, I had cut it. I had put in a ad blocker, so it is not coming up. So you can go to learn.unity.com and you can learn different. So when you want to learn an advanced, so after the session, if you want to learn more advanced stuff about Unity, you can go to this page and then learn different kinds of game development. So even if you are learning to create VR, you need to learn to make games, like basic mobile and PC, like computer games, to actually be able to create VR games as well, VR experiences in general, not just games. So there are so it is a very structured learning platform where you can go through it. It takes very less time to cover, but it takes a lot of time to actually try out and get good with it. So you can try this out later, and there are a lot of template games that you can start with, which is amazing. So, and then there is a community platform where it will just list all the blogs, all the events that are coming up. The Unity Now event is coming up very soon, where you can see a lot of inspiring talks and stuff. And the best thing about Unity is that its forum is very strong. If you have a doubt, if you have any error, anything at all, Unity has its own Stack Overflow kind of thing. Like for CSE and ECE, people might know what Stack Overflow is. So it is a forum where you put in questions and people in the community answer. So Unity has one such thing called answers.unity.com, where you can go there, or forums.unity.com, where you can ask any question, and there will be people around the world. The community is so vast that you will get an answer within minutes. So during the installation, I had asked you to go to installs and then click on add. You can choose any version that you want. If you want older versions, you can go to download archive and download, but we will be using one of these, either 2019.4 or UT 2020.1. Whichever, if you have downloaded any of these, you can go ahead and do it. But even any of the other versions, except for the alpha and beta version, if you go for any other version as well, you will still be able to create VR apps. So I'm just mentioning these versions because it will be consistent to what I will be showing you today. And the best thing about it is you can have multiple versions of Unity here. So I have like 10 versions of Unity installed, and I can switch depending on the project. I can switch between each of these versions. So there are some versions that are really good for high-end graphics, and some versions that are really good for long-term projects and stuff like that. So for long-term projects, I always use 19.4 because it has long-term support. If you are a Linux user, you might know what LTS is, because even if so with new updates, these things will keep updating, and even if you make a project now and even 5 years later, that project will still run, because if it is made with this, or otherwise you will have to keep updating to the newer versions. So to start off, you'll have to go to projects and click on new. So you can either click new directly, or if you have multiple versions of Unity installed, you can choose the version of Unity from here, and then I'll just click on new. And then there are these 4 options that are there. So which is, you can 2D is for basic 2D gaming, 3D is for 3D experiences. Like 3D is basically versatile for any kind of experience, any kind of app that you can build with Unity. Even AR, VR games, movies, so animations, just anything you can use the 3D space. High definition RP. So RP stands for render pipeline. So 3D version uses the default render pipeline that Unity has. High definition render pipeline is for, as the name suggests, it is for high end. If you want something to be extremely graphically intensive, extremely good looking, we can go for HDRP to make the project, but it will need a high end laptop with a good graphics card to actually run it. Then there is a universal render pipeline, which is really good if you are making a multi-platform thing. If you make something for the mobile, exactly something like PUBG. If you're making something like PUBG, it could be made with the Unity render pipeline, universal render pipeline, because it can be easily deployed on all platforms. And 3D does support that, but universal render pipeline is a lot more optimized for something like that. So when you start off your project, you can just give any name for the project, and then just start a new project. You can choose a location for where you want to keep it saved, and then just click create, and Unity will open up. So since I'm on video call, it could take some time for Unity to load up on my laptop. So I have Unity opened up on my system here. So this is what Unity would look like when you start off. This is exactly what the Unity interface will look like, more or less. So the best thing, so once you're in this interface, don't get frightened by this at all. When you click on anything, it looks like it could be a little overwhelming at first. It could look like you're in the cockpit of a an airplane, because there are a lot of buttons and functions happening at the same time. But it is not so. Just a second. Let me just reset it to something that. So this is how. So don't worry about it at all. These are all very easy to understand, and you won't have to go to, like, you don't have to go into the depths to just make your first VR application. So I'll just explain the Unity editor's windows first. So before starting out what each of these windows are, you can see that these tabs, each of these tabs can be removed, moved. You can adjust it however you want. Everything can be adjusted as per your liking, like depending on how you want to use the editor, or if you are familiar with some other software that has a different kind of layout, that can also be done. You can change these and things like this. So this is how the Unity editor looks at first, and it will give you a sample scene. So every let's say, just like in the case of a website's web page, you have different pages, right? So exactly like that, you have scene. Scene is the word that we use to explain each experience, each separate individual experiences. So it is like it can be related to what web pages are. So each scene will have a basic 3D environment. So where you can see the 3D environment is when you start a new, when you have a new scene, there will be a tab called scene here, which will be the first tab on this space. So you can see that there is a 3D space here with a sun here, and then there is this gizmo kind of thing here, and then there is a camera you can see here. So this is basically a complete 3D space. What you can do is you can right click on your mouse and then just look around. You can look around the whole 3D space. And then when you use a scroll bar, you can zoom in, zoom out. And then when you click on the scroll wheel, you can actually pan. So yeah, this would feel a lot better if I added something onto it. But before that, let me just cover all the windows first. So then there is this package manager which manages the packages. We'll not be covering it today. We'll look more into it maybe day after tomorrow. Because when we go for virtual reality SDK and stuff, we'll be looking into this a lot. Then there is this game scene. So the game scene is it will show what you will see exactly when you build the application. So if it is a VR or a game or a cinematic experience, the game scene will show you whatever you have programmed it to see. So by default, what it sees is what the camera here sees. So how do you add things into the scene, right? So there is this tab on the left called the hierarchy tab. Hierarchy tab is where if any of you have used a 3D software, or if you have used Photoshop or GIMP or something like that, you all know, like you all might have heard of Photoshop. So I'm just referring to that. So these are like layers in Photoshop. If you're not familiar with it, it's totally fine. So by default, it comes with a main camera and a direction light. Main camera is basically the camera. By default, you need at least one camera to show something on the game. So the camera actually shows whatever the user needs to see in the game. So when you move it up and down and stuff like that, the visuals actually change. You will, and directional light is basically your sun. So whichever angle this direction light is in, it will show that the light will be in that direction. So I'll talk about these controls a little later. So depending on the direction of the light changes in your scene. So yeah, that's that. So now, before actually explaining what the transform, so what these movement tools are, I will add something into the scene. So what I'm going to add is so there is a plus button here. You can click on it and you can create 3D objects, 2D objects. There are effects like particle systems. You can use particle systems to create fire and stuff like that. There are different kinds of lights you can use. There are audio sources where you can add an audio source and then play music into it and stuff like that. Then there is a video player where you can play a video instead. Then there are a lot of UI elements. So if you're familiar with Android app development, then you know that there will be something like this. You can add buttons, but with code. But here we have everything placed as buttons that you can click, and these buttons will come up. Then there's a basic camera which we already have. We can add multiple cameras as well, but only the main camera will be shown. But depending on how you code it, that can change. So I'll just create a quick 3D object. So under 3D object, there is these objects are called primitives. All of these objects are called primitives because these are the basic building blocks of a VR experience. So first, I'll just create a cube. So when I created a cube, I have a cube here. Like you can see that in the layers in the 3D space, there is a cube. If I want to add more, I can just click here and then I'll just create a sphere. It will also come in the center itself. So it is, they are both occupying the same space. So what we need to do is we need to move these things. So how do we move it? So I believe you remember what I mentioned about transform. So each of these objects have a transform position, rotation, and scale. So when you click on these objects, you can see that on the right, this tab changes when I click on different objects. So each of these, so on the right, you can see the position, rotation, and scale of each object when you click on it. So if I click on the sphere, I can see that its position is in X at 1.1. So these are all in meters, and rotation is in degrees, and scale is ratio basically. So we'll see how it works. So you can change the values here. You can change object values. It will just move to that point. It can rotate. There's no point in rotating a sphere because it will always look the same. I'll just rotate it by 45 degrees and it rotates. And if I want to scale it, I can just change the value of the scale value in X direction, Y direction, or Z direction. So, but you can't always expect the user to know the coordinates as such. Nobody can actually memorize this unless you have a photographic memory. So what Unity gives us is these gizmos. Like you can see the axis arrows. So by default, you'll see these arrows. So when you click on an object, you'll see the arrows come up on the center of that object. So what you can do is, so each of these arrows, represent an axis. So the green line, as you can see here, so this also represents the orientation of that object as well. So the orientation, this represents the orientation of the camera actually, or not the camera, the view in which we are looking at. So the Y is always upwards, and X is always to the left. Like X is not exactly left. Like the red axis is X, and the Z axis is perpendicular to X and Y. So you can consider this as, if you look at the corner of your room, like if you're looking at your room, you'll see that you can see the lines, right? The end lines. So the line that touches the ceiling is basically the Y direction. The line that runs in one direction is on the floor. One side is X and the other side is Z. So XZ is basically your floor, and the y is basically the height from the floor. So to move it, you can either touch one of these, axis and then move it in that direction. So yeah, you can move it like this, and then using the mouse controls I mentioned earlier, which is the zoom, the scroll wheel click to pan, the right click to actually rotate, like the orbiting like this, and then you can zoom in and zoom out. You can also press Alt and right click to actually zoom in and zoom out if you're using a touchpad. Since you don't have a scroll wheel, and you can use 2-finger zoom to actually zoom in and zoom out on a laptop. So yeah, that's it. So you can move things around. You can just move like this. If I want to see it in a different angle, I can move it around and see it like this. So yes. So what? So now we moved it. If I want to rotate it, I can. So yeah, I need to rotate and scale it as well. Like either I can just use these, or there are these buttons on the top. So this is the move tool. Like it is by default, the second one will be selected. So when you select the move tool on any object, it will make you move. You can move the object. If you click on the so the next button is the rotate tool. When you click on it, you will see these circles around the object. So when you go, hover over the lines, you can see that it turns yellow. Whichever line turns yellow, you can rotate it in whichever direction you want. So you don't really need to know exactly the angle that you want to rotate it to, but you can actually just rotate it just like that. The next button is for scaling. So scale has these axis buttons again, but when you what you need, so exactly the same way that we did earlier, we can click on one of these boxes here, and then we can just expand. So if you want to scale it uniformly, if you want to keep the ratio same, you can click on the center and move. The next rect tool does not apply to 3D space, it is for 2D. And then there is a move, rotate, or scale tool, which is like the superset of all of these. So you can either move or scale or even rotate, all in the same tool. Sorry. So if you want to move an object in one plane, you can see that these planes are also highlighted. You can move that. This is in scale mode. You can move, rotate, or scale in that plane as well. So that is about placing planes. So now we see these objects like this, right? So when you go to the game view, it is like this. So the reason why it seems so is because it depends on where the camera is positioned. So you can see a minimized view of the camera here. So this is how the camera is, what the camera is looking at. So what you will have to do is zoom in, zoom out, adjust your view so that you can see where the camera is. When you move the camera, and depending on how far the camera or what angle the camera is in, you can you can see each of these stuff. So yeah, that's about the camera, and depending on that, the game view also changes. So the next thing I'll go about is, now we've put in these objects. Now how do I change the color, right? Like I would want to change the color, and for now we can just ignore these objects. For now, we'll be covering these tomorrow. We'll talk about just the color as of now. So what you have to do is, so there is this tab at the bottom which we did not speak about until now. So we will see project and console at the tab below. Console is basically for errors or comments that we put in the code, which we will not be using today. But project window is basically all the basically all the folders that all the objects or materials that you bring in or import to the project, it comes here. If you have a 3D model of a car that has been built or downloaded, you can just drag it and drop it here, and it will show up here. Once it is here, you can drag and drop it to the 3D space. We will be doing that tomorrow, that also. So before that, right now what we need to do is change color. Let's select this cube. And then what we can see is that there is something called default material here, and it is grayed out. We can't really edit this thing. So what it is, because this is the default object, it only shows the default color, but we can change it. For that, we need to create a material first. Like we need to create so material is basically okay, material basically runs on something called a shader. A shader is a uh, computer generated visual setup where which can it can give visual data onto any object, any 3D object or a mesh. So 3D, I'll talk about meshes tomorrow, but yeah, so what we will have to do is create a material, and then we can just give it a name. So I'll just call it red because I want the cube to be red. So now that it has been created, I'll just select this, and on the inspector I can see red material. Okay, so on red material I can see that there is something called albedo. It means basically the color or the basic texture of the main map. And you can see that there is a color palette. It shows white. I can choose this, and then there is this color wheel where I can just choose the color. So the color changes, and then I selected the color. I can adjust the metallicity and stuff. You can see here at the bottom there is a small preview. So in this preview you can see how it would change depending on the color, or depending on you can adjust the metallicity or the smoothness. When you make it more smooth, it becomes more reflective. It becomes smooth. You understand what smooth is. So when you make it metallic, it becomes more matte like. So yeah, I have adjusted that, and there are a lot of these things which we don't need to care about as of now. So right now we're just focused on color. So what we can do is we change the color. We created a material, but the cube is still white. That is because we haven't applied the the color onto the cube. What we have to do is just drag it and drop it here, and the color changes. So we can do the same with the sphere as well. So what if I wanted to change the sphere's color to maybe green? I can select the sphere. So when I've applied it, you can see that the default material changes to red, the material that I've applied. So let's try to change the color of the sphere. So we will be seeing one problem here, which we will have a solution as well. So what we will do is we'll change the color here. We'll click on this. We'll click on a color space, and then we'll change the sphere to green. But oh no, the cube also turned green, right? So the problem is that we have applied the same material to both. When I edited the material of the sphere, it also edited the same material of the cube. So if I want both of them to be different colors, I have to create different materials. So what I will do is I'll create a material. I'll just name it green. First of all, I'll just make this red again, and then select green, change the color, and voila, we have green. And then I'll just apply to that, and we have two things of different colors. So something that I would like you to try out is to place objects together. We can use the basic 3D objects together and try to create some shapes or something that you can think of. For example, I'll just create a capsule here. I'll just create a cylinder. I'll just make a dummy tree for something that you can try out later if you're trying it out, because this exercise would be to understand the 3D space. So it takes some time to actually understand how to move it. It doesn't take too much time. You just have to spend 5 minutes in the space just walking around, just understanding how it looks and stuff like that. So I have this cylinder. I'll just create another sphere. So we have a sphere. I'll just make it big. So in this angle, it looks like it is on top of this thing. I'll just give this green and then make this red. It looks like it is on top. But the problem with 3D is that you always have to look in the other direction. So now you will see that it was not on the pole at all. So you have to move it and position it in the correct position. The thing is, that is where you have to keep in mind where the positions are. If you feel that the object is very far off, you can just type in the values of the closest things. You can see that the X position is very close in both these objects, and the Y position is different because of the height is different. X and Z should be the same, almost the same, or exactly the same if you wanted to have the same origin. Yeah, a basic tree that any 2-year-old will draw. That is basically something that I would like you to try as your first exercise. But yeah, next up, before moving, I had a lot more planned for today's session, but I'll definitely do one thing that is very interesting for everyone. That is, we'll do a basic animation right now. Yeah. So what we have to do to create an animation is that we will need an animation tab. So how to create it is we have to go to window, we have to go to animation and click on animation, or you can just use Control+6, which is the shortcut for that. So clicking on animation will give you another window that will be here, which could be movable. So what I usually do is, because if it is like overlaying any of the tabs, it feels very bad. I'll just drag it here. Drag it here, I want it here, and I can have this. So you'll see that there is a timeline kind of setup here, and there is a preview, there is a red button, which is the default record button universally, but it is all, there is nothing happening here. What should I do about it? So what I will do is I'll try to move this sphere up and down. So to create an animation, you need to select one of these objects. So first I'll just select this sphere that I've created. And then, so once I click on something, a create button comes up here. You can just click on create, and you can, so you'll have to save an animation file. So you can name it anything. I'll just call it green ball. So it is best not to use spaces when you're naming. You can either use underscores in between, or you can use, if for the programmers who understand programming, you can go for camel case or snake case. It doesn't matter, but as long as you don't keep spaces, there are less issues. It would definitely save if it is there is a space, but only thing is that you will find it hard when you are actually using code to actually manipulate this. So I'll just click save. Yeah, so we have clicked save. So now everything, all the buttons and everything is active now. When you zoom in or zoom out, you can see that the timeline changes. You can adjust it, and there is a white line over here which moves when you click on any of the time spots. So now that sphere is selected and we have this animation set up, what we need to do is, so what I'm planning to do is I'm going to move the tree up and down, the ball up and down a little, like this. It will move up and down. So this is what I'm planning to do. So to moving it up and down, I need it to move in the Y direction, right? So what I will do is I will, at 0 time, I will have to have Y at one position, and at maybe like 1 second, it has to be in another position. So what I will have to do is, here you can see that there is a button called add property. You click on add property, and then there will be these options. So we'll just go with the first option, which is transform, which I mentioned that because we are changing the position right now, we need transform, and then click on plus here. And then you can see that there are these, diamonds that come up here. These are called, keys. So animation keys. So each of these keys determine the property of that point. So when you select a key, and then that is the position of that point. That is, so right now at 0 point, I wanted to start from here itself. So if I want another position at, at 30 seconds, what I will have to do is, first, I'll just hit record over here. So there is this record button which records the animation that we do. We just click on this. We just go here. So at half a second, I want it to move to this point. And then at 1 second, I want it to move back to that point, right? So now the animation has been recorded. You can see that it is slight. I'm not sure if you can see it. It is slightly red in color because we are in record mode. When you're in record mode, this whole timeline is red. Now, once you've recorded your animation, you have to click stop, and then you can just hit play, and the object moves up and down. So it didn't move much, so I need to make it move a lot more. Or maybe I'll just increase the timeline. Yeah. That's something. Position. Okay, that's fixed. Sorry. So I'm not sure what happened there, but yeah, when something like that happens, where you can just move the frames here so that you can see that all the frames are working correctly. So then when you hit play, it will move up and down. Similarly, if you wanted to move it in more than one axis, or if you wanted to rotate, all you have to do is just click add property, transform, and then click on if you wanted to scale, I'll just scale it as well. So at this point, I still have record button on, so I'll just scale it a little bit. I'll just click on the scale button, and then you can see that the scale also changes with the size. I'll just make the start size very small so that it is noticeable. The start size is there, and then the end size also I have to make it small. So you can see that it goes from big to small. So the problem now is that even though it is playing, at the top you will see that there is a slight jerk. That is because the start and the stop points are not the same. So what you can do, you need to make the start and the stop points exactly the same. Right now I accidentally made it exactly the same. So in case it is not exactly the same, what you can do is select the point, and you can go to transform here, right click, copy the component, and then go to here and then click on paste component, and it will be exactly the same. There will be no difference, the start and the end point, so that it'll look much more normal. So that is about animation. Yeah, I'll just move on to questions for now. Does anyone have any question as of now? Like, was it a little too overwhelming to anyone? Oh, please repeat animations. Okay. Do you want me to repeat animations, Mr. Zinka Raj? Oh, steps. Okay, I can repeat that. You can still see my. Oh, I present again. Now. Okay. This time we'll animate something else. So first you have to select the object. Then the button create will be here. You have to click on create, and then create an animation. I'll create a cube animation, then save it, and I get this. Now what I will do is I have to click on add property, transform, then this time I'll add rotation, then I just move it here. So you can either click on you can either record the keyframe, you can keep the record on and then change it. And then here I just make it even bigger. Oh, this time I change scale. So next I can change the rotate. I can choose any of the time frames here and then change the rotation to that point. Now I can see that it rotating and scaling at the same time. Now all I need to do is stop recording and hit play. So that is it. These are all the steps for animation, but to make it more unique and clear, you can click on these, make it, copy the, if you wanted to the start and stop to be the same, you can click here, copy the component, and then click here and paste the component. And then you can see that it goes back. It doesn't go back. Oh yeah, okay. So here we did not change the scale, so we need to change the scale as well. And then paste component. So now it will be back to the original. Okay. Oh, record is not on. So keep that in mind. When you want to change the values, you need to keep record on. That was a mistake that I just did. You just change, and then you can see that it goes big and small. So is that fine? Was that fine? Oh, not getting the option of animation. Oh yes, okay. To get the animation option, you have to go to Window, and then go to Animation here. Window button, then Animation, then click on Animation. So then this window will show up. So initially the window would empty. So yeah, it would look something like this without this button. Was that clear, sir? Mr. Manoj Patil. Okay, awesome. Okay, sir. Even though after playing the animation, why the available is it happen in final output also? Okay, so did you mean that? I did not really understand the question. Axis. Difference between animation and sorry, I'll just cover Mr. Sagar. Can you, Mr. Sagar, can you unmute and ask me the question? I'm not really sure I understand the question. That's okay with you. Oh yeah, if anyone wants to ask, you can just unmute. You don't have to type because it's totally fine.
Sir,
Yes.
does animation come under AR, sir?
No, ma'am. So AR, we haven't reached AR yet. So this is basically the basics of understanding the game engine. So we need to understand how Unity 3D, the game engine, works to actually make AR. So we'll get to AR towards the end of the third or fourth day. I think it's the fourth day, and we might not be doing AR in Unity, but we'll be doing VR in Unity. But if we have time, we'll also cover AR in Unity as well. We'll probably be doing AR in another software called Spark AR. But yes, in AR and VR and any game 3D experience, we need to do animation.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So Sagar sir, I'm not really sure of the question. If you can ask me that, I can answer that. For that, I can answer Reshu Bansal's question, which is difference between animation and game mode. That is a very good question, sir. Okay, so what? So animation is basically to control the animations that will play in the experience. So depending on the timeline, it will just keep looping. So in the game mode, that is not what happens. So the game mode is when you set up all the animations, when you coded everything, when you put in all the game mechanics and everything. Game mode is the output of all of that. So when I hit, so that is something I missed. Thank you for asking that question. So when you're done with all the animations and when you're done with all the, let's say if we are done with coding and if we're done with the Unity physics and stuff like that, when you just hit play, what happens is whatever animations that you put up, that all of those animations will play at the same time. So right now the camera is too close to the sphere, so I'll just move the camera a little backward. so that I'll just move it. So here, when you move the camera and place it, and that'll be what you will see in the game mode. So you can see all of these animations happening at the same time. So what happens when you do a basic animation, all the animations keep looping. So to control animations and to change animations and stuff like that, we will have to write code. We'll probably cover that in the next session. Okay. Any other question? Oh, not got expected answer. So Sagar sir, can you unmute and ask? I did not understand the question. Oh, okay. Okay. I heard someone else asking the question.
Sir,
Yes, ma'am.
in Unity, is it possible to create characters also, sir, or only objects?
No, these are basically for testing and basic objects only we can do. For creating characters and everything else, we'll need to create from another 3D modeling software. So something like the most free and open source software is called Blender. So Blender is something that you can use to create 3D objects, or you can download, if you want to just try things out or make basic things that are not proprietary, you can use free objects that are available. I'll just type in the links to from where you can download free objects. One is poly.google.com and one is Sketchfab. So to answer Dheeraj sir's question, is there any particular language to code? Yes, we will be coding in Unity. Only C# works. C# is the only language that we can code. So to download 3D models, you can go to either poly.google.com. If I'm still sharing my screen, right? So in poly.google.com, you can find a lot of 3D models. You can just search for something, let's say car, and then you'll get all kinds. So these are all low poly things that can even run on phones and even the lowest end of phones. But if you want more high-end free stuff, you can go to Sketchfab. So Sketchfab has a lot of paid stuff as well, but you just have to find, there are a lot of free things as well. If I just type car, you'll show me things for $9, $10 and stuff. But if I click on downloadable, I can get free things as well. These objects are free to download. So these cars and all you can download for free. So this is basically where you can, if you're just trying things out, you can just download these. You can just download any of these objects and then import it to your scene. Like all you have to do is drag and drop it into this project tab, and then you can bring it into your scene. So when you created something into the project tab, let's say, I'll show you that tomorrow. I'll show you how to import and bring objects. But if you want to experiment today, you can definitely try it out. And you can see in the project tab here that there are some things that have been created here. There are two things under the name cube, and there are two things under the name sphere or the green ball. So the cube is the controller. So we made animations for two objects, right? The cube and the sphere. So when we created an animation for cube, an animation controller for cube was created. This is the animator controller, and for sphere also there was an animator controller that was created. And these are the animation files. If you don't want it to loop, you can click on this animation file, turn off the loop, and it will only happen once. So if you play it this time, you will see that the cube will only animate once and then stop. So yeah, that's it. Any other questions? But how can we make the object downloadable? Like from here, sir, can you unmute and ask, sir? That'll be, or ma'am, it'll be easier for me to understand.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please ask.
How will we make it downloadable, sir?
Do you mean from here?
Yeah.
Oh, you can just click on any of these models and then download it. Oh, this is for $9. Sorry. I need to download something free. Okay. Click on anything that's free. You can go down and download 3D model. So when you download, make sure that you can get it. You can download a GLTF or FBX. So here there is a blend file. For blend files to work, you need to have Blender installed. Otherwise, it will be OBJ. It will have the format of OBJ or FBX. So let's put this in OBJ.
Okay, sir, understood.
Okay, so yeah. See, this is FBX. FBX is the best format to use in Unity. So if you can get FBX format, that'll be perfect, because that I think I'll explain tomorrow. But you can definitely try downloading and importing. If there are issues, I can address it in tomorrow's session.
Okay, sir.
Okay, and there was another question from Professor Reshu again. How to use Python code, machine learning code in Unity? So you cannot use Python to do machine learning within Unity, but what you can use so have the Python running as a separate application in the system, and when you have or on the cloud or wherever you're deploying it, what you have to do is you can either get the data into Unity through APIs. You can create APIs and then transfer the data, have a communication link between it. Depending on what kind of communication you need, you can do that. Or another thing that is within Unity, you can actually create your own neural networks and stuff to some extent. And even there is one specific feature that Unity has called ML agents. So ML agents is basically Unity's own machine learning tool that lets you use reinforcement learning, but it only lets you use reinforcement learning. But there are a lot of things you can do with this. But if you're trying to do machine learning with Unity, this will be a great place to start. If you already understand machine learning, this will be very easy for you, because even someone without a deep understanding, I don't have a deep understanding of machine learning. I only know the basics. I have done only very limited stuff, but even I can do machine learning using this. So someone with an expertise in this in machine learning can easily use ML agents to make good, make really good train models and stuff. You make use of train models and make amazing experiences. Any other questions? Are there no other questions? Okay, thank you so much, all the faculty, for the comments. And please let me, I will just show you my contact details so that you can ping me if you want to. So here is my mail ID and contact number. I would prefer if you would ping me on mail. But yeah, if it is a very big necessity, then feel free to call as well. I don't mind. I totally don't mind. So if anyone else has a question, please let me know. Today's session was basically the introduction to Unity 3D. So if you're creating VR or AR, if you're creating VR or AR, you need to understand it is best to understand the basics of Unity 3D, because then only you can create a VR or AR properly. There are two tutorials on YouTube that can teach you how to create a VR app or an AR app in 5 minutes. But the problem is that it doesn't go into the depth of, or it doesn't even explain the basics of Unity, so that you cannot do anything more than what is shown in the tutorial. Okay, so there is another question. Can we convert hand-drawn sketches to 3D model? So you can't really convert it directly, but what you will have to do is model it. Like if you have hand-drawn sketches from all different angles, you'll have to model it using software like Blender. So Blender is a free and open source software which you can use. So you can download this. You can use drawings as references, but you will have to create, So Blender from sketches. I'll just show you how usually artists do that. They use sketches as references to actually make it. So there are tools you can just refer to free tutorials online, and you can create your own 3D experiences. I mean 3D models. So you can see. Oh, this is using grease pencil. This is a different one. So what you can do, let's see if this is the right one. Yeah, if you have a sketch, you can use that as a reference and then create the model like this. You will have to create every single part, like starting from each part, you'll have to create. So it will be very different from what you saw in Unity, because you'll have to, change every single aspect of the sketch, aspect of the model, depending on what it should look like. And there are plenty of tools to make basic shapes and stuff which you can use. Okay. So how to transform one object to another? Example, sphere to cube or vice versa. So you can't really. So you can transform from you can transform a sphere into a cube, but that will require a lot more deeper understanding of mesh manipulation. So each of these 3D models. So I was hoping to explain that tomorrow, but we won't be able to. So you won't be able to directly change from sphere to cube in the session that I'll be teaching right now. You will need a little more coding experience to actually do that. What you can do, so each of these objects are based of meshes. So each of these are meshes. Let's see. Okay, show selection wire. So you can see that each of these things have a small wire kind of thing that goes through. Probably the sphere would be better. Okay. So this is what a mesh looks like. So you can see that there are blue lines going in. So that is how the computer renders a sphere. So this is basically what a mesh is. This is the outline or the mesh of the 3D object. So the mesh is shown here. You can see that there is a mesh renderer and a mesh filter. So one way to change it complete in one instance is you can just change it to a sphere like this. And you can change this via code as well. But if you want it to transform gradually like an animation, you will need to write code. Like write code in the sense you will have to manipulate these meshes. You will have to cut down each vertices of the meshes and then make it into a cube. When you look at the cube, it has only 6 meshes, whereas a sphere has about hundreds. There are hundreds of polygons in it, like not meshes. The cube has 6 faces, so there are 12 polygons. So this one has about hundreds of polygons. So yeah, it would take a lot of time to learn that. But if you are good with C# coding, you can easily pick it up maybe in a month. Any other questions, or did I miss any questions? If I missed any of the questions, you could just unmute and ask. I'm not really sure if I missed any of the questions. I hope the session wasn't too fast. I was going as slow as I can, and I was hoping to cover at one more topic, but I think I will cover it on the next day, where we will be creating terrains and mountains and stuff. Oh, so for doing 3D modeling, we have to use a separate software. Yes, we will have to use a separate software for 3D modeling. You can only bring 3D models in, even animation to some extent is limited. We cannot animate very, let's say for a perfectly capable human bodies running animation and stuff like that. Doing it in Unity is a lot harder. So we can create the animation in some create the animation. We can create the animation in some other software and then bring it here. So the objective, the need for Unity is not for animation or creating this. The core requirement of Unity is that it simulates physics. You can program mechanics. You can have functions running. So none of these can happen in a 3D modeling software. We use Unity so that we need certain things to happen when the user does a certain thing. So that is why we use Unity. So how to transform a sphere into a cube or vice versa. So that's what, sir. We'll have to write code to actually, change a sphere to a cube or a cube to a sphere. I can probably show it to you tomorrow if you can bring it up. We can either, you cannot. So transforming a sphere completely into a cube, like an animation, would take a lot of time to code. But just if you want to just turn one on and off in the same position, making it look like it is changing, that can be done with a few lines of code. Yes, thank you so much for the coordinators for this, giving me this opportunity again. And if you have any other questions also, you can definitely ask. I hope I wasn't too fast or anything. If anything was hard to understand, just let me know or ping me on mail. Then I can give you correct resources. Or if you want more resources on this, you can just ping me on mail. I can just share links or just explain things via mail as well. Okay, so can animated characters be created? So animated characters can be created, but in a sense that you have to create the 3D models first in a 3D modeling software and animate it in the 3D modeling software itself. Otherwise, if you have a 3D model, if you have created a 3D model character, then what you can do is there is something called Mixamo. Is mixamo.com, where you can just upload a 3D model and you can animate it. So this is a very rough and frugal way. Not everyone does it, but for development purposes, we actually use it. So, log in and show you just really quick. So if you have a character model, then you can just, what you need to do is just upload it here. You can upload a character here, and then there are all these animations. You can just select one of these and that animation will get set. I think my internet is not fast enough to do this. So you can see that any model that you upload will have the animation, and then you can download the character and then use it in Unity. I hope that answers your question, sir. Any other questions? I think we have gone about half an hour more than we expected. I hope that's fine with everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful session. Any more questions from the participants? So you can end the session now.
Oh, yes.
The feedback form will be sent in your WhatsApp group, so you can fill up the feedback form. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I guess we'll see each other tomorrow around the same time for the next steps. Hope you will try out some of it and come back with questions if you have any. I'll be open to answer any questions. Tomorrow we'll have we'll touch up a little bit of coding as well, and more into making terrains and making you doing physics and Unity. So thank you everyone for your patience and for your questions as well. See you.